Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Cage Cash podcast. I'm your host, Ryan, at Ryan's MMA Picks. John is off today. Got an interview for a new job, so good luck to John here coming up. All the Cage Cash faithful, drop a comment down in the chat. Let us know what John's going to be doing and how well he's going to be doing it. But with that being said, really excited here to break down the UFC 290 card, Volkanovski versus Rodriguez, and then Moreno and Pantoja, two, but really three. So awesome card, really fun, high level 14 fights. So coming out with this content a little bit later in the week this week, but just wanted to make sure we got you guys our predictions. So you're going to be seeing down below here some of our favorite picks, predictions, and everything in between. So I've got all of John's notes as well, so we'll be sure to touch on those. But with that being said, let's get right into it. We won't go through every fight in too much detail, but are going to just touch on them all and kind of give you our sides and predictions on each one. And pardon me just a moment, gonna lean over and grab a phone here. Excuse us as well for the technical issues today. The camera might not be quite up to snuff, but hopefully you guys are seeing and hearing this okay once it gets uploaded onto YouTube. So with that being said, let's start with the first fight of the night, which is Camwell Kirk and Esteban Ribovich. This has been, an interesting fight where the line's kind of gone much closer to a pick 'em. Kirk opened up about a plus 200 favorite earlier, and then even at the beginning of this week was hovering around that plus 160 mark. That's where I actually jumped in. So I jumped in on Kirk for to win a unit, so about 0.65 units on Kirk at plus 159. And really, I just favor the grappling and the wrestling upside that he's going to bring to the table here, and particularly given the fact that Ribovich really struggled with it the last time out, against Tiger Claw or Panther Claw. Now the Tajik tank, right? But that's really kind of what I'm relying on here. I definitely have a bit of buyer's remorse, and I'm not sure I'm really interested in that Kirk side much anymore at the price that it's at. I think Esteban is a pretty solid striker on the feet, right? But I just don't know that he's going to be able to have that competitive takedown defense that's really going to be necessary to win this fight, right? And quickly we'll jump on best fight odds just to have this up in the background so we can see kind of what we are seeing. And of course that does not share with you. So let me quickly represent my screen and then you guys will be able to see everything just a little bit better. So great, we went on best fight odds. That's not even what I want. I want fight odds.io. Great. So we're taking a look at the most current lines. We're seeing Camwell Kirk is now kind of Ribovich is getting a little bit of steam here. Odds are starting to widen back out a little bit, and I expect it stays pretty close here. But at this point, it's a stay away. Do kind of favor this fight to end inside the distance, and yeah, with that, let's keep it moving up the card. Oh, and John as well did have Kirk money line plus inside the distance. So John sees that Kirk path to finish is a good spot as well. They had the plus 600 on sub earlier in the week. I was tempted there, didn't jump in, but now it's like plus 350. So I'm going to stay away from this and just hope Kirk can deliver me that unit, but not feeling super good about this one. Moving next up the card, we've got Shannon Ross versus Jesus Aguilar. Shannon Ross, the Australian fighter, coming out of City Kickboxing with the rest of the boys there, Adesanya and Volkanovski and all the kind of team. And then you got Jesus Aguilar, who, came into the UFC on short notice, fought Tatsuro Taira, made it almost around, right, and looked fine on the ground, or at least I'd say his defensive, grappling was sufficient until obviously kind of getting caught by Taira there in a submission. But Aguilar, you've heard it kind of all week on all the podcasts, is a guillotine hunter. That really is almost his largest path to victory. It seems like he's not awesome anywhere else, but coming back on the other side, right, like Shannon Ross has been real bad so far in his UFC tenure. Lost his Contender Series fight got the next fight booked, honestly, just because I think he's fighting out of City Kickboxing, right, and kind of getting that team the hype that they do deserve. But then he came out there against Clayton Rodriguez last time out, lost in 48 seconds, and just got pieced up with one of the cleanest combos you're ever going to see. So really have concerns about the durability of Shannon Ross. Even though Aguilar isn't the most technical or prettiest striker on the feet, I do think if he hits him with a couple power shots, that Ross could be in trouble, right? Whereas kind of coming back the other way, I do like the Ross finishing instinct. I like his stand up a little bit more than Aguilar. So all that being said, I think it's a pretty close to a toss up fight, and the odds have been closing much more in the favor of Shannon Ross, and I think that's correct, right? I am going to go with Jesus Aguilar in this one. I do think that he's able to keep a bit of distance on the feet and or kind of work in that takedowns and offensive wrestling, right, and get himself in a position. But something I'm definitely not touching from either a money line or a total perspective, because I can see both of these guys kind of average skills canceling each other out, even though we've seen both of them prone to being finished, right? So not sure I can get a really good read one way or another. Looking at John's pick, John is going to go with Aguilar by decision, or by submission, I should say. So that's an interesting one. We can quickly take a look at where that's sitting right now. Yeah, Aguilar by submission is down to plus 200. You can get plus 280 on some other books, depending on where you can get that. That's on Unibet, so not really a bettable line there. But plus 200, yeah, I think that is probably his largest win condition. But as I said, right, I also think that there's a good chance that this could go to decision, just given that neither of these guys are really big finishers, right? And I think there's a chance that that could happen, right? So we're seeing some steam coming in on that over 2.5 right now. So if you're interested in that fight goes to decision, I think now is probably the time to jump in and play it. Great. So next up, we're going to go with Cameron Saaiman and Terrence Mitchell. This is an interesting fight. Saaiman is obviously kind of the Dricus du Plessis protege. He looks like he's about 19 years old, or about my age at the very least, right? And he probably almost is. We'll take a quick look here. He's 22, so he's a year younger than me. Splits John and I over here, but he's a great prospect and super talented. He seems like a good dude as well. But yeah, you go back and watch his 2 previous UFC fights, and then he fought on the Contender Series as well. All of those fights, he looked really solid on the feet. He's a quick striker, is in great shape athletically, right? Just is a real kind of athletic phenomenon in there, that I think in the UFC can take you a long way, right? Especially against lower level competition where cardio plus just pure power that he kind of possesses and quickness, right, are really key tools that'll really help your way up the rankings and also just allow you to make some of those mistakes that we have seen him make in circumstances, right? But be able to get out of it just because he kind of has that back door. On the other side, it's Terrence Mitchell, #1 bantamweight in Alaska, fighting on the Alaskan regional scene, right? Monk from MMA, Monk Petition, great DFS guy. Go give him a follow and subscribe to his YouTube channel. But he called out the stat, the strength of schedule has lowest on the card by far for Terrence Mitchell. One of the lowest numbers that Monk had ever seen. And I think that does scare me here because while Mitchell is a dominant grappler and is able to find the back, has almost all of his wins by submission. I think 14 of his 15 wins coming inside the distance, right? It's just against cans in relative comparison to who the lowest level of the UFC is. And I don't think Cameron Saaiman is the lowest level of the UFC, right? I think this is another setup spot for Saaiman to go in and get the victory. And I think he does just that. So I like Saaiman. I like Saaiman inside the distance here, because I just don't trust Terrence Mitchell's level of competition. I don't trust his durability, right? He has gone out, inside the distance in some of those losses before as well. John is going to go Saaiman as well. Obviously, no bet. We can take a look at where that line is sitting right now, and it continues to just kind of steam, right? It's a really chalky card, as I may have touched on, but Lots of people are going to be throwing stuff into parlays. Definitely would advise against that. If you are going to look for Simon, I like it on the feet, right? Because in my mind, he is going to try and keep Mitchell stood up, so he doesn't have to deal with that grappling or the potential for submission, right? So my look would probably be Simon by KO. But man, at minus 155, right, almost a 60% implied probability on the KO there. I think that's something you really got to stay away from. This would just be a total pass for me from a betting perspective. The under 1.5 is juiced up as well. Maybe if we had jumped on these a little bit earlier, but with where it sits right now, I think this is one where you grab a beer and you watch Cameron Simon and see, because I think a couple more fights and he'll kind of get that step up in competition, and we'll be able to see what he can do against a higher level guy. So next up, we've got Vitor Petrino versus Marcin Prachnio. I won't spend too much time on this one. Petrino's a really interesting prospect. I think he's super green. Light heavyweight is not the deepest talent pool in the world, right? But I think Petrino, in theory, has all the skills to make a run here in the future, right? And I think Prachnio is a good guy to get another UFC level win against. Only 25 years old, right? Has got 6 wins by KO, 2 by decision, but has just looked really good. Beat the Pleasure Man last time out, where he was the minus 105, but really kind of dominated that fight against Turkalj. Really being fight of the night, just because the Pleasure Man was able to take just so much punishment there. And then you got Marcin Prachnio coming back on the other side. You'll remember him for fighting William Knight last time out, right? All those leg kicks he was throwing at range really busted up the leg of William Knight. And the big scare there was just Prachnio couldn't get him out of there, right? Which, God, with how awful Knight looked that night, it almost looked like he was looking for an excuse to quit, right? So it was a fine performance, but I don't think we really learned a lot there. And you look back before that, and the reason a lot of people had picked Knight in that matchup, right, is there's serious durability concerns with Prachnio, right? We don't know what his chin looks like, really. What we do know what it looks like, and it's not good. And I think this fight could be pretty binary, because he doesn't have a lot of defensive grappling either, right? And I think that is where Petrino is best at. 2 areas, right? It's that offensive power on the feet, particularly in that first round where he's going to come out swinging. I don't think Prachnio can take that shot. And then you got the offensive wrestling as well, right? And I think he has a great chance, if he needs to or if he wants to, right, for whatever reason he does get tagged or he does get touched, to be able to implement that and cruise there as well. So we'll take a look. This line has ballooned a lot lately. Oh wow, but it's starting to come back in on the Prachnio side, so that's interesting. Might need to look more into that one and understand what's driving that line movement. But yeah, we were seeing Prachnio all the way up at the plus 250 range there on the 4th, and now it's plus 205 at BetOnline. So it's interesting. I'll be kind of curious and be taking a look at that one. Go back and watch some of that weigh-in footage just to see what they were looking like. But yeah, I do like Prachnio, or I'm sorry, I like Petrino here. The way I would probably play this is a KO round 1, right? So Petrino by KO is minus 160, but Petrino by KO round 1 you can get for plus 200, plus 175. I think that's largely his win condition, right? And yeah, that's really all I'm going to say about that one, and we'll keep it moving. So next up, we've got Edgar Chairez and Tatsuro Taira. Chairez is the 10-4 Mexican prospect here, coming in on short notice. And yeah, I mean, transparently, I didn't do a ton of tape on this one. The line was already so wide to begin with, so won't spend too much time here. From what I've seen from Chairez, right, he likes to keep it on the ground, and that's probably his A path to victory, right? But against somebody like Taira, he's going to need to keep it on the feet, and even if he does that, I don't really like his chances here, right? Like we've seen Taira's striking continue to improve as well. Kind of go back and watch some of his younger tape, and he's got a lot of submissions on the record, but that's not necessarily just that he's taking people down, controlling and finding a submission, right? A lot of the time he's going in there, knocking somebody down with a big punch, and then is able to find that finish and jump on the neck and get him out of there quickly, right? So I think Tyra does something similar here. The one bet I did jump on was the over 1.5 rounds at plus money earlier in the week. So let's look together at where that is at right now. So you can still get the same price. You can actually get a little bit better price. I had played it at plus 105. The prop template like that from Uncle Weezy. So that was something I was willing to kind of give a shot on. I think Chirez might be able to survive just given his grappling upside. His defensive grappling has looked okay as well. Obviously does have some losses by submission though. So, that's a bet that I'm having a bit of buyer's remorse on. I was hoping the line would move in my favor and I might be able to cash that one out. That's something I gotta stop doing, and just making sure I'm really putting some more effort into researching and capping these fights before I go through and pick a side or pick a over under. But I do like Tyra here. I think he gets it done. We'll see if John has anything absolutely crazy. But no, John's going with the Tyra money line as well, but no bet. So with that being said, let's move on to the next fight. Now we're starting to get into some good ones here. We've got Jimmy Crute and Alonzo Menafield. If you've heard this one before, John said it earlier in the week. He's like, wait a second, I thought we already talked about that one, or we already broke it down, and you did. Jimmy Crute and Alonzo Menafield fought each other their last fights back in February and fought to a majority draw. Crute was, I think Crute was probably winning the fight. Menafield got a point deduction for the fence grab, but somehow still ended up scoring it the Menafield way. And to me, this is a tough fight to pick. I think this is probably the big one that people are kind of taking a stand on this week, just because it is pretty even money and it was a pretty close fight last time out. We know a bit about both of these guys. Jimmy Crute is obviously, okay on the feet, just has no striking defense. Good offensive grappling, can gas out, right? Alonzo Menafield is superior in the boxing and stand up, I think, but definitely doesn't have the ground game to match and is not very good off of his back and can struggle to get up. Where he does really excel is that takedown defense, right? And last time out, we saw him make it really hard for Crute to go out there and actually get the takedown, which gassed both of them out pretty badly, right? And why that third round was a pretty sloppy affair. But looking at this one again, I kind of trust Crute. I think he is the upside. I think he's still kind of the prospect of the two of them with a little bit more upside in the UFC and a little bit more organizational push or interest as well. So I do like Crute here to go in and implement some of that wrestling and grappling and find a finish. Honestly, I think that's the way I played this fight. I played the under 2.5 rounds at a chalky minus 250 earlier this week, but I think it does cash. So I was willing to lay the number there. Because last time, it seemed like it could have ended 5 different times, and somehow they made their way to decision, right? So I'm going to go back to the well here. I like violence in this spot, and give me Jimmy Crute to get the W. John, on the other side, is kind of talking about that other win condition, right? He is going to go with the Menafield KO, and you look back at some of his stats, right? Like that is definitely his path to victory here, especially against such a dominant grappler or such a at least dominant submission grappler in Jimmy Crute, right? So if Alonso can keep this on the feet, I think there's a really good shot he can find that knockout, right? Because as we said, Crute's striking defense is just awful. But I think Crute hopefully learned at least a little bit to maybe keep his hands up a little bit more, or get out of the way and look to get that fight down in the mat early and often, because I don't think he wants to stand on the feet with Menafield. I don't think that's a good path for him. But yeah, relying on UFC fighters to follow a good game plan or the game plan you might have in your head is never really a good idea. So I'm going to be staying away from this fight. I don't really love either side of it. The money's moving in towards Crute, so that's interesting. I don't know what there is to say about that, right? It might just be it's usually that wrestling grappling upside, right? That can sometimes dictate a line like this if they think, last time out they were pretty even. If one guy can implement takedowns and win some minutes on the mat, then the line can tend to move their way. And I think that might be what we're seeing a little bit of here. We'll take a look at just where those over unders are set now. Yeah, you're still kind of getting similar prices, right? Similar to what I paid. So I'm hopeful that that one cashes because pretty big play that I put on there. So, yeah, make sure to check me out on Bet MMA Tips. Always transparent, even when it's ugly. At Ryan's MMA Picks for all my bets for free. Next up, we have got Yasmin Yergui and Denise Gomes. This is a really good fight. I'm excited to see this one. Yergui, it looked awesome her last time out. I think she's the shit when it comes to what's next at the strawweight division for the UFC, and I think they have every prerogative to push her as a Mexican born fighter and a pretty girl as well. She's only 24 years old. I think she has kind of all of those key aspects you need to be a promotional powerhouse within the UFC, right? And she's just looked so good in her two fights so far, right? Beats Yasmin Lucindo and then beats Estelle Nunez, both solid fights. Nunez was pushing back and trying to, give her a little bit of the business, the tough girl approach. Yergui was having no part of that and was able to get her out of there in the second round. Coming back though on the Gomes side, it's going to be a little bit similar, I think, to that Nunez style where she's going to come in and look to bomb. She's got power on the feet, like real power for this weight class, which is kind of few and far between at strawweight. But, I think if she can work it in and make the fight dirty, there's a good chance that, she could touch her with something. So that's really going to be the interesting thing here, right? Loma, when she fought Loma, what Loma did a really good job of was staying on the outside, right, managing that distance and was able to just kind of cruise to a decision victory because anytime Gomes came in, she'd give her the kind of 1-2 straight and then step out of the way and keep things at distance. And that's what Yergui probably needs to do here. I just think you're paying a pretty hefty price to be confident in that happening, right? To be confident that she's going to implement the right game plan and look to use her tools to stay at range. So I definitely do like the Yergui side here. I think she is the play. John, though, is going to go with Denise Gomes. And I think, we were talking about that one quickly beforehand. I think it's that KO equity that she has and that ability to, really get in that phone booth and put some damage on her. And when we're talking about a women's strawweight fight, right, that's likely going to be a kickboxing match because neither of these girls are looking to wrestle. Plus 325 on a dog is a pretty nice look. So I think that's it's a dog or pass spot. I wouldn't really recommend Yergui in any of these parlays either because one of these big favorites is probably going to shit the bed this weekend. So wouldn't want my money tied up too closely on Yergui in this spot. I think the play honestly is probably like an under. I think violence was an interesting way to look at this one. You can still get plus money on the under 2.5. The analytics might not like that bet, but I think the way that both of these women fight, there's a good chance that, either Gomes goes for it and gasses herself out a little bit, where then Yergui's able to kind of turn it on and pick her apart and find the finish, or, we see Gomes crash the distance and land something big and kind of flash get Yergui out of there. Skill for skill, I think it's Yergui all day, right? But you never really know, especially with two still real young girls who don't have a ton of cage time and octagon experience. So I'm going to go with Yergui here. John's got Gomes though, so head-to-head matchup here, and we'll be sure to talk through it next week and reflect on who was the right side of this one. So we'll go. We've got 2 prelims left, and then moving on to the main card. All right, so let me get a sip of my drink, and then we'll break down these final few fights. Great. So next we've got Jack Della Maddalena and Josiah Harrell. Not a ton to say here. I think JDM is the side for sure. Props to Harrell for stepping up on very, very late notice, almost a week. So, yeah, I mean, Harrell's okay. I watched a little bit of tape on him, and he looked pretty decent. The muscle hamster, right? 24 years of age. And his looked good in his career. It's just the competition level is just awful. And I think JDM is a top 15 welterweight. I don't know if he's actually in the rankings or that's just the Tapology ranking saying that. But yeah, I think he's got a chance to really be up towards the top of that division sooner rather than later. So I like Maddalena here. I think he gets the job done. But again, not somebody I'm super interested in parlaying up or putting a ton of money behind. We'll take a look at where the odds sit right now, and he's almost the minus 1,000 favorite, right? So I don't think there's value on the dog though either. So this is something I'll be completely passing on. Yeah, under 1.5 minus 275. So they're basically saying JDM's going to go in there and hurt this guy and hurt him bad. So John's got JDM as well, but no bet. So let's just keep this one moving. Next, we've got Robbie Lawler and Nico Price. Robbie Lawler, obviously one of the goats of the UFC, goats in terms of probably promotional workhorse, not necessarily the best fighter of all time, but really fun fighter, really action-packed fighter. He's been in some absolute wars throughout his career. And then you got Nico Price on the other side, who has also been in a bunch of wars, but is 7 years his junior, or maybe 8 years his junior, and in my mind, is just a little bit more. He's less declined than Lawler is at this point. I cannot put money on Robbie Lawler. I think in his last couple of fights we've seen, right, like he it's like he's flinchy on the feet to get hit. It's kind of like he moves before the punch actually connects. It looks a little weird and it looks a little, I don't know the right word, but it's not something that I'm interested in backing from a betting perspective. Lou Betcha on the that Four Horsemen shows with Gordo Gambles was talking about the KO only finish, which was minus 165 at that time. I think that's a really fun way to play it because I do think one of these guys is probably getting knocked out. Neither of their durability is anything to write home about, especially with where they are right now in their career. And that gives you the opportunity to cheer for Robbie Lawler, or just cheer for some violence, right? So, we're seeing it. People are coming in on Robbie Lawler here. Not sure whether that is anything to do with data or informed opinions, or if that's just Narrative Nation kind of taking over and people seeing Lawler, a guy who they've known for a long time, as a big dog and wanted to jump on there, but. This will be Lawler's last fight for all intents and purposes. That's what we've kind of heard. And betting on a fighter going into a retirement fight is never something that I really want to be a part of. We've seen some really ugly performances kind of turned in, and as we've said before on the show, UFC and MMA in general is not a sport where retirements usually end well for those going into it. So I do like Price here. Let's take a look. Let's see what John likes. John has got Price by KO as well. Let's take a look at where that line is. Because as I said, you could get either of them by KO, but at minus 165. But you could get Price by KO at plus 115, right? And then what's Lawler by KO? Plus 475. So yeah, if you feel really strongly one way or another, I think you should only feel strongly on the Price. I don't think we've seen anything from Lawler lately to justify that he's going to go in and be able to get him out of there, right? But yeah, it could be a more fun way to play it if you do think it's gonna finish. So, but yeah, Price is going to be the side for both John and I this week. Next up, we've got Bo Nickel and Valentin Woodburn. Wow. Mr. Woodburn is stepping in on 3 or 4 days' notice. 7-0 fighter, but he's 29 years old, right? So almost a prospect, but obviously kind of has fought just a really low level of competition on the local regional scene through the Combat Night promotion. I think his only path to victory is an early knockout, and like a first round kind of mean Lord knockout where he catches Bo Nickel coming in with a double leg or something to that effect. It's not going to happen though. Bo Nickel's going to go out there and probably sub him quickly within the first couple of minutes. But it's probably something, the Couch Warrior had a plus 3,500 first round KO. It's just a tenth of a unit, right? That's the way I'm probably playing it as well. It continues to just juice up. But yeah, I mean, it would be I don't really have anything against Bo Nickel either. But I would have much rather liked to see him face Trayshawn Gore, who I think could have put up a little bit more of a test when it comes to the defensive wrestling and staying on the feet for a few seconds, and also just a little bit better gas tank than I think we can rely on Woodburn here, because I think Woodburn will likely come in here and adrenaline dump, whether or not he's able to get Nickel out of there. But yeah, Nickel's going to be the play. He's likely to close as the largest favorite ever in UFC history, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. But yeah, Bo Nickel continues to kind of ride that hype train towards the top. I hope sooner rather than later here we see a little bit more of a competitive matchup, just to kind of get an understanding of where he's at, right? What his striking looks like now, all those kinds of things, because all we've really seen is just you know heavy shots on the feet to try and kind of come in and land that takedown. And not to say that's not a super effective way to fight, right? But I just like to see him tested a little bit more. Not sure Val Woodburn is the guy to do that, but hey, I'll lose $2 to find out. So let's see. John also, I assume, has our guy, because if not, that is going to be tough. Yep. Nickel for John as well, but no bet. Next up, Dan Hooker versus Jalen Turner. This is my biggest bet of the card. Probably one of the fights I'm most interested in and most looking forward to. And drummer, please. I'm going to go with Jalen Turner in this one. I think he gets Dan Hooker out of there early. I think he KOs him within the first round. Honestly, I think Turner's going to be the much bigger dude in there, much more athletic, much younger, better on the feet, better grappling. Maybe not better wrestling. I think that's where Hooker might have the one upside. But I don't trust Hooker to wrestle, first of all. I think he's at least going to play with him on the feet for a minute. And I think if he does that, he's going to get hit, and Jalen Turner is going to put his lights out. We've seen it a lot. A lot of people have been talking about it. Dan Hooker looks like he's going through a bit of like a midlife crisis, right? He's got the blonde-dyed hair. He's got new tat sleeves up and down the legs. And I don't know. He's been running his mouth on Twitter and stuff too. Like he's trying to suggest Islam cheated the last time out and all these things too. I just don't know how focused he is on his own path forward and his own path to victory. And then, another stay away from me is we heard during the interviews yesterday, he's like, the only reason I'm here is I'm still fighting for a title. And it's like, no, you're not. Like, you're not. I don't see Dan Hooker getting back to that point, right? And if he does, I'll eat my words and send him an apology note, right? But I think Hooker had his shot at the top of the division. Although he's still a really fun, interesting fighter, I don't think he's really getting back there. And even when he did, right, all of his losses were against those top level guys who beat him, and it wasn't like many of those fights were super competitive. Whereas Jalen Turner fought Mateus Gamrot to what I thought was a victory last time out. Gamrot got the nod there, but I thought Jalen Turner did enough, and he did more damage for sure to get that victory. So, I rate Gamrot, super highly. Turner staying in that fight was something I was shocked by. I thought Gamrot was going to kind of slice through him after a little bit, right? Put on that old vet presence against Turner, but that didn't happen whatsoever. Turner was in that fight. Turner was great on the feet, great defensive wrestling. So yeah, I like Turner to get this done. I jumped in on him at minus 200 for 2 units, and then I re-upped for 2 more at minus 210. So I like the Turner side here. And we'll take a look at what John's looking at as well. John has got Turner as well, but no bet. And we'll take a look at where that line is now. We're seeing Turner getting all the way up there towards minus 300, right? So I think that narrative has continued to push that line further. I'm not sure that's something I'd be running to the window to play at this point. If anything, as I said, that inside the distance line is something I'd be looking at. And I think the KO is probably more likely So you get minus 160 inside the distance, KO plus 155. That's a good look. I like that. And the submission is definitely live as well. But I think the one thing here where Hooker might have a little bit of the advantage, right, is the wrestling. So if he does use the wrestling, or Turner perceives that he's going to use the wrestling, right, I could see him trying to keep this on the feet. Work that takedown defense early, and then piece him up at range and find a finish. So inside the distance, the savior play, but I do think the KO is the more likely of the two outcomes here. All right. Well, we're moving into the final three fights of the night. We got three really great ones that I'm excited to talk about. And yeah, these are really going to be some awesome fights that honestly, it seems like we haven't had it in a while. There's been a bit of a lull here in terms of high level competition. So really excited to kind of talk through these. First, we got Robert Whittaker and Dricus du Plessis. Robert Whittaker is my guy, man. He is an amazing fighter, has kind of had that career resurgence after, that first loss to Adesanya, came back, fought his way back up there. Man, it was a close fight. Just barely got out touched in three of those rounds, but I thought he, even had a shot or a claim towards beating Adesanya in that last fight. And other than that, he's been able to really pick off anybody else who's challenged him at the top of the division and has made it look pretty easy in doing so. Whereas Dricus du Plessis is coming in, and he is such an interesting guy, right? Doesn't look all that convincing every time when he's in there. He goes through adversity. He looks tired. He looks gassed. He looks like he can't breathe. And then he finds a finish, or he finds a way to get it done. And, as much as that is not technical analysis, right? That's what Dricus is all about. He's not a technical guy. He's a guy who's going to come forward with, kind of outlandish striking, right? And just bum rush people in little short bursts, hit him with the, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the way in. Whereas Robert Whittaker is going to fight behind that jab, looks to go 1, 2 in that head kick, right? And that's going to be tough, I think, here, just because du Plessis is going to be crowding that distance so much, right? And he has some good wrestling upside here. But the thing is, I don't think he's a better wrestler than Robert Whittaker. I just don't buy that. I think Robert Whittaker would kind of expose him a little bit if this fight hit the mat. So if I'm Dricus, I'm looking for a early finish on the feet. Whereas Whittaker, I think he is the better fighter in every aspect, and a hell of a lot more technical and a hell of a lot better gas tank, right? So I do like Whittaker a lot in this matchup. I think he gets it done. Again, it's not something you're parlaying in my mind, just because there is that concern of kind of the meme finish on the du Plessis side. But you're seeing minus 400s here. A popular bet that I've seen and I do like this week is that under 2.5 rounds, and man, it's getting steamed right now. But if you're confident in the Whittaker side, right, Whittaker inside the distance is down to even money or plus 110 out on some books as well. So that's probably the way I'd be looking to play it if I do want to get some action on the Whittaker side. I jumped in earlier in the week and got in on that under 2.5. I think closer to like minus, I don't know, 140 or something. We can see where it was up earlier in the week. Yeah, maybe minus 145. I think I jumped in. So yeah, even at this line though, like I would jump on this Bovada line because it's got a little bit better than the market. For whatever reason, yeah, we're not getting the FanDuel numbers aren't popping up, but DraftKings already got it down to minus 175. So I like this number on Bovada if you're going to jump in and try and play something now. But yeah, I think Whittaker is able to get the job done this weekend, and probably gets that title shot once more. It's a little weird, right? Because we've seen him against Adesanya a few times out, and I worry that there's not a whole lot differently he's going to be able to do to throw off Adesanya, but he's deserving, and he continues to fight at that highest level at the top weight class, or the top of his weight class, I should say, right? Whereas if du Plessis wins this one, I think he's quickly kind of fast tracked towards the title opportunity. Probably fights a guy like Cannonier or something, and then maybe Strickland gets that title shot right off the top, right? Just to get a bit of fresh blood, getting that championship opportunity. So Great. With that, we'll move on to the co-main event. We've got Brandon Moreno and Alexandre Pantoja. This is going to be a really awesome fight. You gotta love the flyweights. It's just great fighting. They're both so technical. They're both so well rounded at what they do. Moreno, obviously, we've seen for years now, continuously fighting Davis and Figueiredo, but he's looked so good there and has really kind of dominated that story arc and that history, and will be remembered for a long time for what he was able to do against what at the time was, he was number one pound for pound, right? Coming in when Moreno kind of took him down the first time and beat him, and really never regained that same stature. Whereas Moreno has kind of continued to excel and look really good. On the other side, though, you got Alexandre Pantoja, who's 25-5 and 4-1 in his last 5 in. Only loss come to Askar Askarov, who is a great fighter, as we know, but was forced into retirement due to some health issues. But Pantoja is an amazing grappler. He has a knack for finding the back and locking in the body triangle and taking necks home with him, right? Moreno is a solid wrestler, solid all-around fighter, but defensive and offensive wrestling is excellent. And the volume is really where he excels, and the cardio, right? As the fight goes longer, Moreno seems to get better, whereas Pantoja, I think, is going to be, a bit more powerful, have a bit more of the grappling upside in terms of the finish equity, right? I think the finish equity in general is on the Pantoja side here. At least that's the way I'm seeing it. So this line has been really interesting, though, throughout the week. So we'll take a look at where it's sitting now. Pantoja continues to widen out as the underdog. I jumped in on Pantoja, breaking the secret a little bit of which way I'm leaning. But I jumped in on him about 150, and I thought I was getting a good line and it would close further. He went up to 165, and I put a little bit more. And then I also hit the inside the distance line. But man, Moreno has continued to get money pouring in on him. Not sure what's moving the market, because it seems, if you look online, that there's a lot of Pantoja love this weekend. But man, that's a scary sight when there's a lot of Pantoja love. You're seeing a lot of reasons for him to be favored, or not favored, but at least for the line to be a lot closer than this suggests, right? And that line continues to balloon out. So I'm a bit scared here, just as how this one might go down. But I do like Pantoja's finish equity early here. He's beat Moreno twice before. I know you've heard that on all the other podcasts this week, but he's beat him twice before, and like we have seen that, yes, there is a redemption arc there. There's a revenge arc, but God, it gets in people's heads, I think, a little bit too, right? Like we saw Adesanya really struggle with that. And like, I would argue is still a little bit, he's got the rivalry in his head to a point, where it's like, I don't know if that it's healthy, and I don't see Moreno as that kind of fighter necessarily, right? Or somebody who really dwells on those things. Like, so much has changed since the last time he lost to Pantoja, right? But yeah, man, I do like Pantoja here, and I like him inside the distance. So let's take a look at where that line is now. I jumped on it at plus 300. Let's see where it is now. I might have gone right by it. Nope. So we're seeing Pantoja inside the distance. Yeah, still plus 300. So, I think that's probably his greater path to win equity here, because the problem is I don't see him winning enough minutes to get 3 rounds on Moreno, right? If he doesn't put Moreno out of there, I think Moreno starts to pull away late. And the big question could be something, right? Like if Pantoja is able to excel just from, the physicality and the bullying of Moreno in the first 2 rounds, Moreno is able to pull away in the last 2 rounds. Like, does it come down to a really tightly contested 3rd round or something like that? Like, I think there's a pretty good possibility of that. I like Moreno to win by decision if the fight gets there. The interesting thing here is maybe John's biggest kind of contrarian play of the week
Moreno inside the distance here. Which obviously kind of down right around the decision line now, so people are seeing that as a possibility. But I think that's a really sharp look as well, just because Moreno has that cardio. We've seen it, right? We've seen him go 5 rounds often, and we've seen him continue to push and get better as those 5 rounds go on, right? And if Pantoja goes out with the game plan I think he does, which is, get him out of there or die trying, right? Then honestly, I could see him gassing and Moreno being able to just land enough volume and eventually be able to get him out of there inside the distance. So John's going to go with Moreno inside the distance. I've got Pantoja inside the distance. This is probably the fight I'm most excited for coming up this weekend. Let us know down below who you got in the matchup, which side you're on, whether it's Ryan or John. And really excited to see who's going to be the new champ come Saturday night or early Sunday morning. And then finally, we'll move into the final fight of the night, the main event. We've got Alexander Volkanovski and Yair Rodriguez. This is going to be a great fight as well. Volk, the Great, and Yair El Pantera. Volk, obviously, the last loss coming to Islam, whereas Yair Rodriguez, his last loss was against Max Holloway back about a year and a half ago. Otherwise, these guys have been pretty dang dominant every time out since then. But yeah, I think there's a lot of love for Yair here because of his striking upside, his ability to kind of land the unorthodox and maybe catch Volk with something. And if John was here, he'd probably have a lot more to say to back the Yair side. I know John likes he's training at Elevation and former Aztec Temple narrative. And there's something to be said for that, right? Like, I think Yair's cardio was a bit more of a problem in the past, right? We saw him kind of get out wrestled by Frankie Edgar there, who's a good wrestler, right? But was still on the decline of his career at the time that they fought, right? So that wasn't a great look. But transparently, I see Volk as the most parlayable of the minus 400 favorites here this weekend. I think he has Yair covered everywhere except for that meme knockout, which is definitely possible, right? So I'm not going to be running to the window to throw 20 units on Volk thinking that he gets this done every single time. But I think there's a really good shot that he can just use the different tools that he has to go out there and find a finish. In all honesty, I think his boxing is underrated. He's going to be able to keep Yair, I think, at the range he needs him. I think he'll have to be careful to avoid those spinning attacks, avoid those flying knees and those kinds of things. But I don't know that you're going to knock Volk out one punch or one kick with anything, right? And if it gets then down to the ground, I don't know that I trust Yair to finish with ground and pound. His ground and pound is not overly exciting or damaging, and I don't think that a guy like Volk is going to get taken out by that, right? And even if Yair finds a way to drop him, maybe in the first round or something, I think Volk comes back and wins, the next 4, or is able to turn the tides and get the finish himself. Volk in my mind is honestly one of the greatest fighters of all time. I think no matter what happens in this matchup, that will still be the case, right? But really, I think he goes out here, he gets another victory to prove that he is truly that featherweight GOAT, and there's no doubt about it, right? And then he makes the move up to lightweight and tries to go on a run, because you go back and you watch that Islam fight, it was really, really close. I do think Islam won, but it was a really close fight, right? And anybody who is giving that much of a challenge to the champion, something that we haven't seen anybody at lightweight be able to come even close to being able to do yet, right? In terms of having that ability to stay in there and weather the storm that Islam brings. Volk did that, right? Coming up a weight class against, who we've seen just dominate, a division heavier. And while Yair has, the narrative and definitely some good recent wins on his side and some flashy stuff over Emmett last time out and a great sub, I just think that their skill gaps are still pretty miles apart here. And I don't think you're going to catch Volk with something. I think he's too smart. He's too skilled. And as a result, I like him pretty big in this matchup. I took some Volk inside the distance because I do think, similar to the last fight, I think Yair either goes in there to find a finish or kind of die trying. And I don't love Yair's striking defense, right? We've seen, obviously, it was Max Holloway, but, Volk has solved the Max Holloway code that nobody else is able to, right? And, so I like him on the feet. I like the wrestling upside a lot. Just really looking forward to kind of seeing Volk shut up everybody one more time at the featherweight 145 weight class, and then make that move up and hopefully go for a belt, because I think he really has the ability to do that. But it's got to happen. It's got to happen now, because he's getting older. He's getting almost 35, right? So he's really got to go for it and find that path. But such an exciting fight, really great one. And with that, guys, thanks for tuning in for another episode of Cage Cash. John will be back on next week to talk through the results as well. But appreciate you guys tuning in. Leave a like, leave a comment down below. Helps us out, helps grow the channel. And really excited for UFC 290, Volkanovski versus Rodriguez. We'll see you next time, guys. Thanks.